here is to give the opening remarks. Dr. Jagdish Chandra Pokhrel, Chairman of Nepal Institute for Urban and Regional Studies. Dr. Deepak Prakash Paskota, Chairman, Nepal Mercy Vedic Foundation. Dr. Kingsley Brooks, International Director and Chairman of Mercy Vedic Institute. Dr. Ike Hartman, an architect, Ostek Skalski, who are the presenters of this session. Mr. Om Tarananda Rajopadhyay, urban policy expert of Nepal Institute for Urban and Regional Studies. Professor Dr. Jivaraj Pokhrel, former Vice Chancellor of Nepal Academy of Science and Technology. Mr. Arjun Koirala, Mercy Vastu Coordinator and Urban Planner. Distinguished participants from Nepal and abroad. On behalf of Nepal Institute for Urban and Regional Studies, I welcome you all in this international webinar on Vedic approach to resilient city planning. This webinar has been jointly organized by Nepal Institute for Urban and Regional Studies and Mercy Vedic Foundation, Nepal. We have invited academicians, policymakers, bureaucrats, professionals, city developers, city managers, engineers, architects, and students of architecture and urban planning. I am very happy by the overwhelming participation of the eminent personalities of Nepal and abroad. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, we are locked down at our home and our normal life and livelihood has been severely disrupted. Human civilization has come under serious threat despite our lofty claims of scientific and technological advancement. We human beings, whether rich or poor, black or white, powerful or weak, are feeling desperate and helpless in front of the invisible enemy called coronavirus. Why are we facing this pandemic? Is it because we fail to understand the call of nature? Or is it because we overexploited Mother Nature? Or is it because we ignored the symbiotic relationship between humans, animals, plants that form the natural ecosystem? Our cities and towns are being planned and developed on modern principles which are based on industrialization, automobiles, aviation, quick economic return, and accumulation of wealth. Globalization of old economy and advancement of information and communication technology has crossed political and administrative boundaries and brought the people of different nationalities closer than ever before. Serious researchers and thinkers are now questioning the ability of mankind to achieve peace and happiness through materialistic gains only. Wars, regional conflict, ethnic conflict, natural and man-made disasters, climate change effects, epidemic and pandemic are threatening the human settlements and cities. We have been experiencing the impacts of climate change in our daily lives and our socioeconomic activities. Now it is high time that we review the present day development paradigm and explore the vast treasure of ancient knowledge inscripted in Vedas and Upanishads. This ocean of knowledge may give us new insight into the sustainable city planning principles and practices. Since the past few decades, Vastu Shastra or the Vedic architecture is getting popularity in building design and construction in South Asian countries. I hope that Vedic approach of city planning too will also be popular not only in South Asia, but in other countries of the region. I expect that the presentation and discussion in this session shall unleash the Vedic knowledge of city planning and identify the pragmatic application methods and techniques. As we know, human civilization has passed through Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and is going through Kali Yuga, where material wealth is considered more important than the morality, ethics, service, sacrifice, and charity. Outward show of ego or strength has overshadowed inner strength, happiness, and peace of mind. Currently, human civilization is entering the age of artificial intelligence, and in the threshold of creating super smart society. In this context, we need to know whether Vedic principles are still relevant, and if so, how. Many people, due to their ignorance, think that Vedic principles and scientific theories are contradicting each other and cannot go together. How can we convince them that the Veda itself is the science of universe? I request all of you to participate actively in this session and provide valuable comments and suggestions, and also enjoy this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kishore sir. I'm Arjun Koirala. I'll be with all of you throughout this program. The expected time, for this program is about 1 hour 45 minutes, but we may push a little bit beyond that depending upon your interests and availability of experts and discussants as well. Much have been already covered by Kishore Thapa, the Board of Directors of NEOS. So but I just quickly go into a couple of points that to take out from Kishore Thapa's introductory notes. The basically we'll be talking here about Sthavatya Veda, which provides principle and approaches to planning, basically in harmony with natural law. Um, it helps us avoiding negativity with the help of the law of nature, and we consider Sthavatya Veda as providing knowledge for establishment of structure, even the infrastructure. So with this brief note, I would like to introduce a little more the experts of today. The first presentation that we will have is expected to be from Dr. Ike Hartman. Um, uh, he's engaged for more than 30 years in research and development in the field of Vedic architecture, and that is in collaboration with the Mercy Veda Vigyan Viswapitam in India. He has achieved his doctorate degree from Mercy Vedic University, Holland, and he's been conducting international and national conferences on Vastu Vidya, Mercy Sthavatya Veda in many countries, North America, Holland, Switzerland, Germany, Great Britain, and he holds a lot of courses and training seminars in Vastu architecture, including city planning. He is also founding director of the they call it Fortune Creating Buildings, so USA. He's also director of Raja Builders International, which is based in Zurich, Switzerland. He's chairman of the board of directors at the Institute of Vedic City Planning, Mercy University of Management, Holland. Next speaker that we have today is Wojtek Skaleski, who is by profession architect from Finland. He is trained in Vastu Vidya at Mercy Vedic University in Netherlands 20 years back. Um, since then, he's working full-time as consultant and designer of over 100 Vastu projects in Europe and Asia, including several projects in Nepal. He's also leading international Vastu courses and conferences for architects and builders. I'm pretty sure that the discussant, Dr. Jibraj Pokhrel, who was the Vice Chancellor of the National Academy of Science and Technology, and Om Dharananda Rajapadhyay, who's been in many of the important places with the government of Nepal. Both of them are quite familiar in our disciplinary field. Um, so we'll start listening to the experts, but prior to that, just getting back into logistics arrangement, that we kindly request you to provide your questions, queries in the chat box. We may not have that much time as desired by the participants. Please emphasize more on putting your queries in the chat box. We had also provided a brief disclaimer on your consent to have this program recorded, so I have received that as well. Uh, yeah, let's hear more from the presenters. So but in addition to that, we do have a couple of speakers as well. So let's move on to the chairperson of Mercy Vedic Movement, Nepal Mercy Vedic Foundation, Mr. Deepak Prakash Baskota, who is also former state minister at the Ministry of Home Affairs, to Dr. Deepak Prakash Baskota.
Thank you, Arjunji. Dear President of host organization, Dr. Pokhrel, and his colleagues of this board of directors of this organization, and other respected, valued participants, and our guests who are going to present this program today from international. Already Mr. Arjun has introduced all of them, and I want to add that Dr. I.K. Hartman is the Minister of Global Country of World Peace, Minister of Architect. You know, there is a global country of world peace and the government is there. And you know, Dr. Kingsley Brook work as international director for Asia, including Nepal, and also the Raja of 8 countries of Asian countries. In this way, the whole world has governed by structure of this government. And I am chairing in Nepal as a president of, as a chairperson of Maharishi Vedic Foundation, is started since 12 years ago. This is the 12 years we are celebrating, and we are happy to organize this program in the same year. And though there is a strict discipline to be maintained due to the COVID-19, which is happening in Nepal, also in Nepal. I have nothing to say more. In the board of directors, Dr. Thapa and Arjun Koirala has mentioned already some introduction and all these things. Let me introduce you that what we have started in Nepal. And Maharishi has a dream, creating Ramraj and bringing heaven on earth, changing the world as a Vedic world. And he wanted to change Nepal, the first country of the world, as a Vedic country in the world. So, and in 1972, who visited Nepal, and he has announced in Ratna Park with the, in the 25, more than 25,000 people who are gathered over there. He announced that Nepal to lead the world. It is a big slogan he announced. We had not understand what he said. Now the time is coming why he announced that things. So, and now he created many option program and to bring heaven on earth and to change the world as Vedic world, to make every nation invincibility. The several programs he created throughout the world, let's say all over the country where the member countries of United Nations. And we are working in Nepal, and especially there are 40 aspects of Vedas, but for the geographical government, Maharishi has emphasized with a lot of scientists, number of scientists are following him, and with the discussion with them, they have emphasized only 12 programs among them. Those 12 programs, one of the program of Vastu Vidya Sthapatya Ved that we are going to present today and going to discussion today. Let me speak only this 12-point program, what they are. What, like supreme political science and religion and culture, music and arts, communication, defense, architecture, administration, economics, agriculture, health, education, and law. Those 12-point program we are trying to implement in Nepal as a Vedic way. And just we have started only Vedic agriculture, that completely organic agriculture, and as well as Vedic architect that we are going to discuss today, and Vedic health based on Ayurveda and naturopathy. And those kind of things we have already started, and we are going to implement all those 12-point program from Nepal. So that I'm very much happy and welcoming you all today on behalf of Nepal Maharshi Vedic Foundation. That I forget exactly the year, 4-5 years ago, was there one of the presenter. He is also known as the Deputy Minister of the Architect, and he was here, and the same person who was Dr. Pokhrel was Vice Chairperson of the National Planning Commission, who inaugurated this conference, and the same kind of conference, the same kinds of meeting we are going to again here. It is our pleasure and joy to participate and to host, to organize today, and all the participants, including the guest. Let me welcome all of you on behalf of this foundation. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Dr. Baskota. Let's welcome Dr. Aiki Hartman to introduce us with the basic Vastu city planning principles. Over to you, Dr. Aiki-ji.
Unmute, yes. Jai Gurudev, thank you for the introduction. It is a very great day today. The skies are clearing in every country. It is such an auspicious omen to see behind Vaskotaji and Raja Kingsley the beautiful snow-capped Himalayan ranges. You have the highest mountain in Nepal, and now it is time for the highest knowledge to flow from Mahashiji. And we had worked, as you said, more than 30 years with Mahashiji on the theory and practices of Maharishi Tapajavid, and we have realized many, many projects around the world. But when we consider Vastu as it stands today in the world, we got about 60 million responses when we did research on the internet. There are hundreds and hundreds of books and small videos, but none of these are kind of complete in their approach. They cannot be used for construction and proper planning. They're completely useless in a way. And also when this knowledge of Vastuvidya went to China 1,000 years ago or so, and now is coming back called Feng Shui, where is the authenticity of this knowledge today? Because over time it got corrupted, and Mahashiji felt it completely needs to be restored. And fortunately, a great Vedic master had come, Mahashiji had come, and he worked with all the eminent Stapatis, the Pandits, the architects, and the scientists to generate a purified, universal, pragmatic, integrated, and also scientifically unified field-based working system that can be taught at the universities and can be certified and is, being used in the network of Maharishi Vedic universities and the associated institutions. And once it is established in Nepal by all of you and by Maharishi Vedic Foundation, as Baskotaji was saying, then we are ready to propose to the Ministry of Urban Development to include a specific set of Vastu guidelines to be part of the bylaws. And in this way, we can bring back Vedic knowledge on this level of construction and planning to Nepal, as it is a Vedic country. And as Baskotaji was saying, Nepal to lead the the world. So maybe now it's my great joy to share the screen and give you an introduction to the different aspects of Vastu Vidya of Maharishi Sthapatya Ved. So let's see if it works. Do you see it?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, we can see it. Please proceed.
Okay. So this is my cover page, Maharishi Sthapatya Ved, Architecture and Planning in Harmony with Natural Law. That's how we say it in English. And with Mahari's blessings, he has always been thinking for what to do for the best of the world. And whatever he did was Vedic. So when we consider Sthapatya Ved and Vastu as a Vedic science, then as a complete knowledge system, it has a structure of 3 levels. It's always like this. Any Vedic science is structured like that. So the first level is the Tattva level, then comes the Shastra level, and then the Vyavhara level. And the Tattva level is the eternal cosmic principles, like the Vedic level. The Shastras are the textbooks of Sthapatya Ved. And then the Vyavhara level means that is the applied level and the best practices in design and construction. So they correspond to the Adhyatmic, Adhibhavic, and Adhibautic level of knowledge. Now, Sthapatya Ved, the word means Stapan, and Ved, as you know, is the total knowledge of natural law. So Sthapatya Ved is first establishing the structure of pure knowledge, the structure of Ved, and then it goes ahead and from there goes into the field of construction. So it is the Vedic science of architecture. The word is science, the Vedic science. And the second term you always hear is Vastu. That is the technology of construction. So these two go hand in hand. And Maharishi is always saying that Vastu is a great power in nature. So he says it is the balancing aspect and harmonizing aspect of natural law, which balances the individual structure with the cosmic structure. Now, it is easy to understand. Supposedly, there's one star on one side and another star on the other side. And then in the middle, there is a point where the influence coming from this one and from the other one is neutralized. So in this neutral point, that is the balancing point where the whole power of Vastu is located. And it says even, he is Stapati who knows the secret of the point. And this point you will see in all our designs, the Brahma Bindu, is represented. It's one of the secrets of all the Vastu designs that there is a Brahmastan and the center point. Now the effect of that is called, the harmonizing effect of that is called Vastu Shanti. That is the balancing effect, and it provides the basis for harmonious, peaceful living, health, wealth, and happiness for everyone. Now Sthapatya Ved is Ved, but it is specified as the Upaved of Atharva Ved. So in the context of, the way Maharishi has organized all the Ved and Vedic sciences, it is, flowing in the yellow area, the Chandas level, that is Sthapatya Ved. And then there's 6 levels of Ved and Vedic literature. First the Veda, then, let me see. First the Veda, then the Vedanga, then the Upanga, and here's the level of the Upaved, then the Brahmana and Pratishakya. And on top we had seen Rigved. The structure of Rigved is a 3-and-1 structure. So Rigved is having Samved, Yajurved, and Atharved, and it flows in terms of Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. And in the same way, the Upaved is copying the structure of the Ved. That's why it's called Upaved, but it's the practical aspect. So Ayurved corresponds to Rigved, Gandharved, Dhanaved, and Sthapatya Ved, again to Atharva Ved. Atharva Ved is that Veda which produces effect. So in the olden days, the Raja always had an Atharvan with him because he would tell him how to solve any problem. So Stapatya Ved is that Ved which is producing effect. So this is Stapatya Ved, and now we have a look at the main textbooks. They're called the Vastutrayi. There are three: Manasa, Mayamata, and Brihad Samhita. There are many more, but these are the main that are being used today, and they're also available in translation in case you want to study. So these are the books. They are coming from two traditions. One is the Vishwakarma tradition, and the other one is the Maya tradition. Maya is more in the south, and Vishwakarma is more in the north of India. Now, in addition, there are 18 teachers. In addition, there are many other books like this. We have listed a few, and you will see that there are many more after that. So these are, I think, it comes to about 150. These are Sanskrit books, and not to consider all the others that have been written in the meantime. So it's the extended literature of Stapatya Ved. But in addition,
Could you be a little louder?
In addition, we have to consider that there are many viewpoints. There are 18 Vastupadeshakas, ancient teachers of Stapatya Ved, and some of them are gods, some of them are rishis, and some of them are rajas. So each one has a different viewpoint. So you can imagine that there is quite something that needs to be considered and clarified, and Mahashiji established a council of Stapadis at Meru, so he could work with them and find out which aspect is more important and which one is authentic. So, as I was saying, he was working with all these great knowledgeable men from India to restore Stapatya Ved based on Veda and make it into a natural law-based and working system of Vastu architecture and urban planning in harmony with total natural law. That's a revival. So in the end, we wanted to have a certified, universal working system of Vastu Vidya that can be applied in any country of the world and in any construction system and in any type of climate, whatever, it has to be universal. So this system we can briefly divide into three aspects. Some are the orientation principles, right orientation. The others are the proportions and the measurement system, the Vedic measurement system. And the third one are the placement of rooms in the building, placement of buildings in the landscape, etc. So the first one, I'm going through these in sequence, is with reference to orientation. So as you know, the strongest influence of natural law comes from the sun. It rises in the east, so it has special energies, but when it sets in the west, it is the opposite, then the energy is going down. So there is a particular type of polarity. We have to remember that. It's not the same. The directions, when they're plus on one side, they're the opposite on the other side. So these 8 directions, supposedly, they have a polarity in terms of quality and function. So these 8 directions in Vedic science, they're called the Ashtadikpal, the lords of the 8 celestial regions. And they're also, they're the most important devatas. So for that reason, because east is the total plus, there is given preference to that. And in Manasa, it says, for that reason, it says due east should be preferred for the buildings of those who desire enlightenment, and we all do. Now, there are 2 aspects to that. One is orientation with reference to the sun, and the other one is kind of alignment with reference to the earth. The earth has a structure, a North Pole, South Pole, and an equator, and the alignment is with regards to the lines that go from north to south and are parallel to the equator. So if we roughly consider these different qualities on the eastern side, it gives full support of nature for success and fulfillment. On the other side, on the Western side, it is the opposite. It gives lack, because the sun is going down, lack of energy and less creativity, health, and everything is going down less. And on the northern side, it is also auspicious because it's the side of the moon, Soma, so that gives prosperity and happiness. And then on the southern side, it's the opposite, It is where destructive influences are entering the home. So we have to understand that there is polarity in the directions. A more complete chart, we can give it to you later also as a handout, shows the quality of all the other directions, and clearly it says best is the entrance facing east, and second best is an entrance facing towards the north. So all the corner directions and the opposite directions are very inauspicious. Then our understanding of directionality is usually based on the image of a compass, because that's what we know. And the compass is pointing into these, like arrows going into these 8 directions. But in Vastu, space has a structure. As I was saying, it is the structure of the Ashtadik path. And they are not arrows going out from the center, but they are areas, like Indra is in the east, Agni in the southeast, Yam in the south, Niriti southwest, Varuna, Vayu, Soma, and Ishan. So all these are having different qualities, and that is the structure of space in Vastu. And these Vastu Devatas, these main Vastu Devatas, they're in all Vastu Mandalas. So the red squares are those Ashtadik paths, and they always appear together with all the Devatas. So what it means is, because the Devatas are also found in the organs and organ systems inside of the human physiology, so then human physiology resonates with all the Vastu Devatas and all the Vishva Devatas throughout all levels of creation and existence in the universe. It also means that human beings are designed according to Vastu, because they have also this very strong symmetry. And it says that the architect of the universe is also the architect of the human body. So this is Vedic architecture. The Sanskrit term, which everybody knows, is Yatha Pinde Tata Brahmande. As is the human body, so is the cosmic body. So that is the interconnectedness from the individual structure to the global structure and to the cosmic structure of sun, moon, and planets and stars. And that means that the connectivity is from Atma to Veda to Vastu to Sharira, the body, to Vishva, the universe, and back to Brahm, totality. That is the full range of Vastu Vidya. So this is a good overview. Now, there's also lots of scientific research. I'm not going to be able to show all of it, but just an indication that you should know there's a lot of scientific research, and more is coming out. For example, that the firing patterns of the neurons in the thalamus of the brain are altered by the direction one is facing, and is thus influencing the entire brain functioning and the whole physiology. So orientation is very important, and in addition, they found there's a Nobel Prize given for that the neural pathways, they are connecting at right angles, like the grid system of a city map. And that's like a GPS system inside the brain. And all this influences the power of the thought and behavior. So whatever we do is having an impact, it's been influenced from the direction in which we sleep and work, etc. To verify this, we had made with thousands of participants a rigorous quality of life study, and you can see that more than 80 or 90% have improved quality of life, 85% better health and less stress, and greater success, in overall 92%, and even the children are much happier, and it says 88%. It's huge, it's very significant, the experience of Vastu. Now, one should, and then even in Ayurveda, it says, one should not even live one day in a building that is not according to Vastu. So then we come to the second item, that is with reference to proportion and Vedic measurement. So these are actually more the design principles which the city planners and developers don't need to know, but you have to know that these design principles exist. So the outer proportions are in terms of, as you can see, length, height, and width, and these auspicious dimensions. They are designed and calculated according to the Ayadi formulas. I'll explain a little later. And any Vastu building is also having this very strong type of symmetry, which goes to the center lines and the center point, and which is also corresponding to the human physiology, because human beings, when you look at yourself, you have right eye, right arm, and the whole thing is very symmetrical. So that resonates also with the Vastu building. In the same way, when you look at the floor plans, the center lines are crossing in the center point, which is then the Brahmanabi, and this is maintained in all Vastu, designs, whatever you do, so that, and for all that, we have used a computerized Vedic measurement system. It is very important to take these different types of measurements, which are according to the human scale, but then when you talk to the Stapadis, what does it mean, human scale? Some take it from the owner, some take it from the Devata, and some take it from themselves. So the human scale is not a fixed scale. It has to be consolidated into a computerized model. And we have done that work. Our mathematicians have done a great work, so that from now on, with great precision, buildings can be verified and certified. Now, in addition, all proportions are purified with reference to the cycles of time and space, and the formula is called the Ayadi Shatvark formula, and that is then representing the cosmic scale, whereas the Purusha Brahman was representing the human scale. So then there are different types of buildings. They are called Ekshala, that is a simple building. Most of them are like this. It's just one wing, like a bungalow. The next one is the Dvishala. Dvishala type of building has two wings like this, like an L shape. The next one is called the Trishala. It has three wings, like an U-shaped building. And then there is the Chatushala, which is like four wings, like that. So they also have to observe the same type of orientation, east facing and north facing, but these are the four basic types and variations of that. And also important is the position. Since we are in the area of placement, is the position of the building in its vastu, in its compound. And there's always the principle of symmetry, but also of symmetry breaking, so that no center line is coinciding with any other center line. And as we then go from the building that sits in its vastu, that is the basic unit. That's the smallest unit of city planning. Then several of them form a cluster, which could have a central space that belongs to all. And the clusters can be bigger and bigger, so that we can arrive at some kind of satellite towns, which are self-sufficient because they have everything in there, education and shopping and offices, commercial, a mixed-use type of vastu development, and could then become bigger and bigger until it's a whole city. Now the last one is in terms of placement. Placement is with reference to rooms and functions in the building. So there's an area for the Brahmastan and the dimension for it. There's another area where the dining room is placed so that the digestion is most healthy there. Another one where the living room is so that social life will be enjoyed more to great and has greatest support. Then there is a study or home office, very important these days. It should be placed there where the intellect is lively and undisturbed. But the main thing inside the building is also that the furniture is placed according to orientation. It's not that you can do anything, you have to observe the same principles. And supposedly in the bedroom, when the head of the bed is to the east, then the position of the wife is on the left and husband on the right. And same when you're sleeping with the head to the south, then husband is on the right and wife is on the left. Or when you're working in your office, home office, or whatever, even in the company, it is best to face east or north, always the same. And obviously, whenever we meditate, wherever we are facing east. These days, we even, when we have a conference like this one, we tell everybody to face east, even though we are connected on the internet, still we are more coherent that way. Now, in addition, we have to consider the environmental features where the building is placed. So then we evaluate the site with reference to the morning sun, with reference to the slope of the land, position of water bodies, and other positions like hills, mountains, roads, etc. So the first one is the evaluation of the sunrise delay that could be caused by mountains in the east. So the way it is done, we are taking the satellite image, and then we look at that point where we want to build, and then we make, due east is the center line. We take 11 measurements and see where the mountains are, because it's quite a range. It's about 45 degrees, 22.5 to the north and 22.5 to the south, which you have to consider, because mountain could be here or here or here or here. So that has also been calculated by a computer program. And the same way we have to evaluate the site with reference to the water body, because water is having a particular influence and it actually goes together. Water flows downhill. So the slope and the water body usually go together. Here it shows that water in the north, northeast, and east is giving prosperity and increase of wealth, and all the other directions are not so good. What is this? And in the same way, when you evaluate the slope, then you can see the green arrows here. They are the positive slope, types of slope, to the north and northeast and east. And then the other ones are then inauspicious and not so good. Now, how to build a vastu building in the mountains and on the slope? So the easiest and best way is you make cut and fill and clear an area for the house to sit on, like a terrace. Now, if that is not possible, you can also build a little bit into the mountain, as you see here. Then one can enter on the ground floor, but that is not a complete floor because it is only half, it's built into the mountain. Then what counts is the floor that is clear and has a shine through, and where the Brahma Sutra can go all the way through. So different options for building on the slope. Now we look into Vastu city planning. What are the elements and the possibilities? For more universal planning, Mahashidi had established this global master grid, which is following the longitudes and latitudes, and it's kind of forming units, and the units are approximately 100 by 100 kilometers, like this. These are the main lines, and these are the latitudes and longitudes. Because we are now teaching a Vedic science, the zero meridian is starting at Mount Kailash, which is basically very close to Nepal. So you are sitting on the zero line, which is from where everything is been counted. The British, they started, from Greenwich when they were drawing up the sea maps, the naval maps. Now, part of the and subdivisions of these planning grids, the subdivisions can be smaller units and then bigger units and then even bigger units. They are part of that same grid. They fit into that, into the coordinates, and they're aligned to the north and south and east and west. So if you want to evaluate them, we call the smaller ones, we call them micro-urban development field. And the medium ones is called a medium urban development field. And then the bigger ones like villages or so, townships, they're called macro urban development fields as it is classified. And then you can go through it. What are they based on? This is based on a 2x2 grid, on a 3x3 grid, on a 4x4, also on a 4x4, but little staggered, and this is on a 5x5. So on these different types of grid formations, we can have our modules until we reach kind of a mixed use urban development field, medium size or whatever size. Now
Kiji,
what
I
happened?
you are very close to your presentation, end of presentations.
Okay, so I can go a little, I want to show you a few examples. Okay, so this is how to deal with an existing city. So you expand it according to Vastu, make a master plan, and bigger and have satellite towns until the whole thing has become an expanded garden city. Now, now I come to the present day ideas of city planning, which is usually still very chaotic. Even when you look at different cities, even expensive cities like Geneva and so, there is no proper orientation being observed. But we have to develop a new urban concept. And especially these days, there are now surveys, as our speaker in the beginning was saying, that how do we want to live after these many months being locked up in high-rise buildings, very uncomfortable. Most people were uncomfortable. So they say there were two classes of people, those with garden and those without garden. At the same time, when we consider the future, we will see that the transportation system and the infrastructures will completely change because there will be many less cars. People will have access to transportation, but that is somewhere else stored. You don't have to have your car in front of your house. There's even flying cars coming, and the traffic will be completely different because these computerized cars, they can lock up to each other and drive like a train, so that the spaces in between are not needed anymore, not to that extent. So there's more space on the streets, there's more space in the city. And then of course all these energies, solar energy, etc. And the emphasis on healthy living, yoga and meditation and good food, etc. All that together will constitute our future cities. And the mayors of Barcelona and Paris, they all have made the requirement that cities are now designed in blocks, in terms of city blocks. They call them the 15-minute city. And that means this is a city block. Roads are only allowed on the outside and not on the inside. So this is then coming to the principle of Vedic city planning as a garden city. This I want you to see, because when we normally talk to a group like you, to developers and planners, we have them together in a conference like this. On the first day, we talk about knowledge, the whole day. Then in the evening, we give them an assignment. And then on the next day, they work, and in the evening of the second day, they present what they have learned in the first day in terms of city planning. You can see these are all hand-drawn or computer-drawn, and in this hand-drawn, he had properly observed the center lines and the center, point, the Brahma Bindu, etc. So they have learned, quite nicely. And then this team, they even went further, also on a weekend, and they started to cut and paste and made then a Vastu model of a whole mountain resort. They cut it all out of styrofoam. Now here's an example of a tilted city plan. What do you do when the city, the existing, is not in orthogonal? Then you have to make a central square like this. And then you have these corners, triangles, what to do with them. So here he made kind of the central square properly aligned, but he made some fitness paths around it like this and created kind of a lotus shape. And this was then accepted by the city planners who were very conservative. So these are the groups that are working together in terms of workshops and charrettes. Here's another example. Then he started to make a central, in phase one, a central square building, and in phase two, another area. And then altogether it became like this. So this is the second example. The third one is, this is a rotated side. It happens to be. Then again, we made the central square like this, and then filled out the corners as an extension. And this is an existing development. Here you can see it started with a core of 18 units. The development has 50 units. So that was an expansion of the first phase. Then suddenly they got more land and more people. So there's an expansion area, adding 90 units to that. And you can see how the architect is very happily showing how the extension works also according to Vastu. Now this is my last example. This is from Florida. It's very nice. You can see they made very beautiful clusters here. These are different clusters of Vastu buildings, and nicely rendered. There are always parks in between buildings. And this is a walkthrough, a fly-through of that same kind of resort. Takes only 1 minute. But I want you to see how nicely they made the roads, and they put the car parking in clusters away like this. This is a hotel that's part of it. Then they have, spacious water bodies. Then here comes some tennis courts like this. Then that is the hotel from the backside. It has a laguna, an artificial lake. This is the big roundabout as you enter. And then the spaces in between, they're not accessible by cars, they're walking distances. See, the cars are parked in clusters somewhere. And then in between buildings, they call them pocket parks. They're small parks like that, see, in between, like this. And these are green spaces just for walking. Here, this is a lake with an island, and that's an amphitheater on the island with a bridge. Behind that is a meditation hall. So everything is in this type of development, nicely done. It's a mixed use. It has offices, commercial, it has villas, one-story buildings, apartment houses. It is all integrated one into the other. And it has achieved quite some density, as you can see. Okay, so that. So then I want to finish. This is our global Vastu portal in 8 languages. That is your team waving at you. These are our publications. This is Mashidi. Thank you very much. Mashistapatyavid Vijayanti. Taram. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Dr. I.K. Hartman. Very comprehensive and very interesting presentations, but I'm sorry that I had to give you a little notice that we're running out of time. So I request the participants to provide your queries in the chat box. Let's see, how much time will remain there for, our discussion. So moving on to next presenter, Wojtek Skalaski, providing examples of ancient and contemporary city planning around the world. Wojtek ji.
Thank you.
You have very limited time. I'm sorry about that.
Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Now?
It's coming up,
Yes.
yes.
Yes, here it is.
So slideshow.
Good.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to this conference. It's a great pleasure because Nepal is very close to my heart. We have many projects since 9 years already, Vastu projects in Nepal. So I'll try to show some examples of what has been built in Nepal in the past or planned in the past in city planning and what we have done during the last few years. And also examples of Vastu city planning or similar principles present in many ancient cultures on all continents, not only in India or Nepal. It will show how universal this knowledge is. First, the list of questions that commonly come from city planners and builders when they hear about Vastu people. They want to know why we use so regular grid pattern. And they even say it's rigid and limiting. They are asking if it is scientific and if it is a new concept and if it is practical or beneficial. Is it worthwhile applying it? And is it limiting us or is it liberating our life? Now, this is an example city planners probably know from their studies of history of city planning, that ancient Rome city planning principle was based on a grid which was oriented towards cardinal directions. They started always with one road from east to west called Decumanus, and then another road from north to south, which was called Cardo. And then a grid was created with a forum and a market in the center, with 4 gates in 4 directions, and even with a wall around, protecting wall. Here is an example from Florence, a center of old Florence in Italy. And you can notice that here they have a grid of streets oriented according to cardinal directions. Then as the city was growing, they forgot about this principle, and that's what happened in most of the cities in Europe. And then the rest of the development is quite chaotic with all possible directions. Influence of orientation, as we have heard from Dr. Hartmann, is the key issue in Vastu. And few people know that the word orientation itself is coming from Greek, and it means sunrise or east. So when we are orienting buildings or orienting city plans, we are connecting them with Orient, not just with any random direction, as it happens these days. So the word orientation is not understood these days, the meaning of that word, by architects and planners, because nobody teaches us at school about it. Now, from science, a Meissner effect is known in physics, which is an example of invincibility in nature. in ordinary conductor, the electrical conductor, electrons are going into all directions and they allow penetration of magnetic field through the system. But in superconductor, where all the electrons are aligned into one direction, are coherent, then outer influence, outer disturbance is rejected. It's not disturbed. And now when we are talking about calamities and viruses and misfortunes, if the city structure is planned in a coherent, harmonious way, then it repels or rejects negative influences from outside. And the similar effect can be seen in Vastu. When you have a chaotic city with streets going to all directions, it is penetrated by negative influences from outside, from stress and tensions or incoherence and calamities. But when the city has a harmonious structure, it reflects the order of cosmos, then the city is rejecting or stopping the outer influences. So that's the secret of Vastu city planning, to create a coherent space which is unaffected by outer negative influences. And now there is a concept of pisachia in Vastu. Pisachia means a buffer, a space, unbuilt space around every building within Vastu fence. There is a Vastu fence protecting building and some unbuilt area. And now with this virus epidemics and the concept of social distancing, we understand even better. It gives more meaning to this pisachia around every building, to have a distance between buildings. So it works in such a way that if there's coherence in the atmosphere or the structure of the building and in the life of the building, then outer influence will not penetrate. If this symbolizes a chaotic or stressful situation in a building or in a structure, and if there is a distance and there's a Vastu fence around, then those buildings are unaffected. In most cities these days, buildings are touching each other, and then negative penetration comes from one building to another. Excuse me. The Vedic saying, if you favor natural law will favor you. And there is a Vastu version of it. If you favor Vastu, Vastu will favor you, which means that there is a support of nature if the building is coherent, the structure is coherent, built in harmony with natural law, then natural law will be more supportive. There will be more effect of good fortune, health, and harmony in the life of those who are using these buildings. So orderly structures, which are in tune with cosmic structures, create harmony. And now we have examples of this protective influence of Vastu structures and Vastu fences. In many stories we have heard from our clients in different parts of the world where Vastu structures were saved from calamities, from natural disasters. And here is one example of protective effect of Vedic architecture from a massive fire in the village, Ramona village in 2000 2005 and 2007, there was a massive fire and only Vastu buildings were saved. That means flame miraculously stopped on Vastu fences. And similar reports we had from Israel and from France and some other countries. And also protection from hurricanes in different countries. And now I'll show a few examples of ancient city planning. These are taken from Google Earth, and there is always an arrow showing north. That north is on the top of each example, and you can see here Mandalay city in Myanmar or Burma is based on a mandala plan and on a grid which is oriented according to cardinal direction. And here, even the development extension of the city was continued on the grid. So they had the knowledge of Vastu. Excuse me. This is an example from St. Petersburg. Outside of St. Petersburg, there is a summer palace of the Tsars called Peterhof, and you can see the plan is based on a mandala pattern with pishacia or protecting buffer. This is an example of a small village in Brazil. They must also have some knowledge of Vastu principles. Maybe it was their own knowledge under a different name, but they knew that there has to be a center, a Brahmastan of the structure, there has to be a grid, and that it has to be oriented according to cardinal directions. Excuse me. And this is an example from Bangalore, from India. Also, central part is a park, and then rectangular, well-oriented grid. And this is from Cambodia, Mahendra Parvata. And this is Adelaide in Australia. So on all continents, the knowledge was there and it has been applied, but it has been forgotten. This is a British Victorian design of a garden city, which is also based clearly on mandala diagram, which is concentric, which has a Vastu wall around, and which has a central point and 3 axes from east to north and south to west. This is an interesting example from Krakow, Poland, where the grid of the city plan is rotated. The city planners were not aware of the meaning of orientation, but later when the church was built in Middle Ages, the builders of the church knew about orientation clearly because they have oriented the church on the axis from west to east, and it is known from early Christian tradition that churches were built in such a way that altar was also always on the east side, and so the people were standing and praying towards east, not other direction. And these days, some leaders of Catholic Church are even saying that we should return to respect or the meaning of Eastern orientation. This is an example from Florida, where the city plan of a settlement is planned not in a rigid way, in a soft, nice garden city style. And here is an example from Russia, outside of St. Petersburg, together with British developers and Gazprom Bank in Russia. We prepared a plan for a city on 25 or 250 hectares. It's called Gorosad. And here is an example of another smaller project from Croatia, outside of Zagreb. The land itself is also rotated, as you can see, but still we were able to fit in a nice plan with about 20, 25 Vastu houses. And this is the 3D of that project. And here is an example from Rendlesham, an existing Vastu garden village. And this is from US, university campus in Fairfield, Iowa. All buildings are facing east with abundant green areas around. And this is a settlement of one family houses, a Vastu garden village also in Fairfield. And this is Maharishi Vedic city, which has been built also in Iowa near Fairfield. And here all the houses are facing east. It's a new official city established about 20 years ago. It's the only city in the world where it is the rule, the law, that all houses have to be built according to Vastu, and all agricultural activity has to be organic agriculture. And this is an example from India. Indian government recently started a project for a new capital of Pradesh, and the city will be called Amaravati. And now a few examples from old Nepal. You probably know this one. This is Lumbini, the temple park outside of Lumbini with all the Buddhist temples. And this is Bharatpur. See, you have there a grid which is oriented towards cardinal directions. So maybe this will be the easiest place to start the first Vastu development project in Nepal. This is an example from a screenshot from Janakpur, your ancient city related to Ramayan. And the temple, Janak temple, is also oriented to cardinal directions with entrance from the east. And here the mandap also is entered from the east. And water on the north, which is also auspicious. And this is in Kathmandu, just north of your airport, Tribhuvan airport. The settlement is called Dibyanagar, and you can see that in the central part, there is a grid of streets which follows cardinal directions. And this is in the western part of Kathmandu. It's called Rani Pokhar. I think it's a temple. And these are our projects, or projects of Maharishi Nepal Foundation, Vedic Foundation, organized by Dr. Deepak Baskota. This is Champa Devi, campus for Pandits, which is almost ready built. So it's in final months of construction. And few other examples of our projects in Nepal. This is Maharishi Vedic Institute in Japa in eastern Nepal. And it's the next project that started already, the construction. And then this is in Banganga near Lumbini. And this one is in Navalparasi. These projects are still waiting for financing. And then this has been built by Deepak Baskota as a headquarter of Nepal Maharishi Vedic Foundation in Kathmandu, actually in Patan. And this is in Tilingatar, a new building on the right side, inaugurated, I think, in December, an additional building as a meditation center for students for Tilingatar school. Another school has been built a few years ago, according to our Vastu plans, in in Dang in western Nepal and in Daijan in eastern Nepal. This is a project that we are starting right now, construction in this year, hopefully, for an Ayurvedic Vyas retreat in Pokhara, Ayurvedic spa. And now how to create a Vastu garden village. There are a few steps to follow. First is to locate a suitable piece of land and contact Maharishi Vastu Consultation Service. And then we will evaluate the suitability of your land with the help of Earth. And we will need a map of the site with its coordinates. And Dr. Hartmann explained a little bit how we do the analysis of the sunrise delay and slope and so on. So this is the phase 2. The phase 3 is we propose a preliminary master plan. And this will help you to see how the land can be used and how many houses can be built there. This is an example of such a plan. This was done in France. So it has also this mandala square in the center and can be nicely arranged even if the land itself is rotated. And step 4 is consultation with our authorized Vedic architect for designing Vastu buildings for your project. So you can select from our portfolio ready model designs, or we can prepare together a set of model designs for your project. So this is the last slide, ending with a proposal or invitation. Let us create a model of an ideal Vastu garden village in Nepal for others to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wojtek-ji. We're running a little late, but this is becoming very interesting. And interesting part is also, falling down here with the discussants, Professor Dr. Jivraj Pokhrel and Om Dharananda Rajopadhyay. May I now invite Dr. Jivraj Pokhrel for a brief discussion on the presentations and some additional ideas. Dr. Pokhrel.
Thank you, Mr. Arjun Koirala. We have had the privilege of going through possibly very illuminating as well as enlightening presentations. That also gave us an opportunity to go around the globe, and that at no cost. So I'd like to thank the arrangers for having such a marvelous program with respect to a theme which is very near to our heart. Now, you see, the discourse is about Vedic architecture, and then when we say Vedic, we attribute a time spanning from 1500 BC to 600 BC in our part of the world. So that time Buddha was born in Nepal, in Lumbini. But then you see the history of Nepal, it incidentally begins from Kathmandu. We had Gopal dynasty, some attributed to 17th century BC, but then I think 11th century BC will be more, realistic. And from after that, we had, these Avirs and then Kirats who ruled in our country. But then Vastu, as a science of planning city as well as planning buildings, it entered into the it entered very greatly in the Litsavi period, which was there about 5th century BC, starting from or 3rd century BC. So at that time, we had Litsavis coming from somewhere near Baisal in India, and then they are said to have injected, this approach of Vastu in the planning of the cities. In fact, Professor Sudarshan Raj Tiwari has made an extensive research on this particular subject. But I don't think he's among the participants here at the moment. But anyway, so Litsavi period is said to be a point of departure when we talk about Vastu kind of a concept in the planning of the city as well as the planning of the houses. Now that was adopted by succeeding dynasties, and then when we come to the modern time, somehow we see this Vastu principle, or for that matter, our traditional system of planning, our traditional system of house designing, they are not, kind of received very enthusiastically in our country. So you see, I was a professor in the Institute of Engineering. Now I'm retired. There we started, we wanted to offer this Vastu as one of the course, but then it was not kind of received very warmly. And then you see that particular plan was at the best, it was abandoned. But then if we see, when in the 20th century, 1956 to be exact, the town of Hanuman Nagar, which was a very roaring kind of bristling town in the in the plains in Madhya, it was washed away by Kosi. And then this was Rajbiraj was a city which was planned, and then Diligent Thapa was the planner. He went as far as Jaipur, because Jaipur at that time was very famous. And then it followed a Vedic system of planning. It has prastara form as its, at its heart. So he went there, and then he saw it. He came back, and then Rajbiraj was planned in a classical style, prastara form. And I think Kishore Jha, I don't know whether or not he is among the participants here, he wrote a very good thesis on the planning of Rajbiraj, and there he has mentioned about, you see, this prastara planning that was adapted in the planning of Nepali cities. But you see, we could not kind of, realize its importance. So if you go to Rajbiraj now, that planned city is at the best kind of very ignored. And after that, we should have in fact taken inspiration, and then the following cities must have been also planned along the Vedic lines, because that is our heritage. And as Deepak Baskuraji said, and then the other guests here, that Nepal has to take a lead. If Nepal had to take a lead, when you see in the modern times, we had this Vastu planning in the Lichavi times. It came little feebly in the Malla times. But then again, you see, it had a kind of made a stage, a comeback in the modern time. But somehow we could not continue that tradition. And then we planned Tikapur, which was planned in the modern concept, following modern concept. Because that time, you see, Lee Corbusier had planned Chandigarh, and it was a household name. And then the Islamabad also was planned by Constantine Doxiadis. So we also we forgot our one heritage, and then we also followed this modern system of planning. And now in the last few years, we have seen very little which has been done in the area of this traditional system of planning, especially in the government projects. We have been aping the modern planning system. So, the Vastu planning has taken a, backseat at the moment. Okay, so that is the kind of a situation that we have. But we all understand, especially now when we have this coronavirus kind of afflicting us, and then dealing a deathly blow. You see, so we think that the traditional system, like in order to develop immunity, people are doing yoga exercises, and then these things also have a place in our country. But somehow we haven't been able to kind of give due recognition to what is otherwise very, and then we could see how in West, and then in our neighboring India, in Burma, and all these places, you see, these planning systems have been very warmly, they have been kind of adopted, and then you see they have done a very good job. So it is in fact, this particular program that you have arranged, it should give us, it should open our eyes in the days to come, and we should possibly, we should again give it a thought, and then in the curriculum also, it has to be there. Especially now we are starting a master's course, but there also we haven't given proper. But then in India, in IIT Kharagpur, they have an architecture course which has this Vastu Shastra as one of the component. And very recently, Mahindra Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya, they are trying to introduce a course which will not only have Vastu Shastra, but also Murta Shastra, and then our modern. So they are trying to take these three, actors, this trinity, triumvirate, and then they are trying to make a course. So there are some good, kind of signs in the horizon. And it might as well be that in the days to come, if we can enter into some kind of a affiliation with, this university, which has been doing a marvelous work around the globe, we can make a start. So, because there is a very positive time, I had to say very many things, but then I like to bring my, kind of observation to a close. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Jivraj Pokhel. Now, may I request Om Dharananda Rajopadhyaya for his discussions notes.
Thank you, Arjun sir. Thank you, Arjun sir, and thank you to both the presenters, Dr. I.K. Hartman and Vedic Skalski, for this very interesting and very comprehensive presentation. And being a professional involved in the sector of urban development and building construction, I took the advantage of this lockdown to briefly study how the traditional Vedas and Shastras have provision for city planning. And I have the opportunity to go through all 18 Puranas, Mahapuranas, and through the Manasara, then the Chanakya's Arthashastra also. So the findings, I believe, will be very useful to all of us. And I will be sharing this in a separate discussion program. But focusing on today's program, I think we must talk also about localization and contextualization of Vastu Shastra. Because globally, it cannot be applied the same way as we do apply here in Nepal or maybe in some Western. It may depend on which hemisphere we live in, which continent we live in, which ecological area we live in, and other factors like that. And for example, we have been from ever since the childhood told that south-facing buildings are better in Kathmandu because it is very cold here. But Vastu does not permit it. And I'm not talking about contextualization or changing the basic tattva level, as Dr. K has said. It has 3 levels of Vastu Shastra. There are tattva level, there is Shastra level, and there is Vyavhar level. So we can focus on that Vyavhar level where we can be practical to cope with the local scenario, local conditions. And that factor leads towards necessity to make Vastu a dynamic thing of discipline. And because building and planning norms, as do building and planning norms, keep changing. They are dynamic documents. We can make, we rather should make Vastu also a dynamic document to cope up with the local requirements, and at times maybe, because we can see that the provisions of Manasara has been deviated by Chanakya to cope with the then required considerations of safety, because that was a very high time when there were numbers of wars between the countries. And his Chanakya's Arthashastra has provision of very brief, very detailed, comprehensive provision on Vastu, but most of its focus is on making this city safer from the attacks from outside. Similarly, when we are talking about the Corona period now, we may be talking, we may have some provisions for incorporating provisions that require to make it pandemic safe. So things like that. And the one major thing we should not forget here is about the tantric aspect of
Sir, we can hear you, but we cannot see you. We're not able to see you. We want to put your video on.
I think it's okay now.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Because in tantric religion, it is considered that the Sri Yantra is the major form of the yantras, and that is the superpower, supernatural power. So that is considered most sacred yantra in Tantrism, and is considered that there will be no Vastu dosha if a Sri yantra is kept at home and is regularly worshipped daily. So this trend is practical in Tantric city planning, at least in Kathmandu Valley. And we can find different forms of city here. For example, Sankarapur in the shape of a conch, a shankha. Kathmandu itself is considered to be shaped like a sword, tarwar, and things like that. And all these Tantric cities are protected by 8 matrikas in 8 corners of the city. So these dimensions may also be added, I think, where practical or where applicable to our Vastu principles, I think. Let me stop here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Up to you, Arjun sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Om sir. Now listening to the experts and the discussants, definitely we can see, there's a lot of possibilities to apply Vastu Shastra in a concrete way here in Nepal as well. We'll now open the discussion session. But primarily, please be focused into the kind of possibilities for its application here in Nepal. I would definitely like to invite for your queries, with your mic on and the video on. But before that, let's go into the chat box where you have the participants have already presented their queries. So let's first move on to the chat box and then go for another round of kind of queries. So first, now to IKG and Vedic, I'm not sure who would like to respond to the queries here, but obviously I leave up to both of you. So for we have a query from Khemraji. At least he has 2 queries. For disasters like earthquake, generally the geometric perfection may be very important. The question is there any relation of Vastu science and geometric configuration for building? For example, in the case of Pashupatinath, the entrance gate is to the west, it's not to the east. So, but during the mega earthquake, it remained safe. The one question is this, and next question is the model presented by IKZ, is this applicable to all over the world in the northern or southern hemisphere, and or are there any exceptions? First let's take these 2 questions and then we move to others.
So maybe I answer that one. Of course, the system is universal. That's what I was trying to explain in the beginning. It is completely universal. It can be performed anywhere in the world because it is based on these 2 things. One was orientation and the other one was alignment. So these things are permanent. Orientation is towards the sun, that's always the same. And the alignment with the body of the earth, of this planet, wherever we are on the world, the sun is rising in the east, the earth is rotating towards it, and it has a north pole and south pole and equator. Therefore, there is no change. It is a universal system that works anywhere in the world. So maybe there are, scriptures in North India and South India and all kinds of other places, but that is with reference to, local variations and local adaptations where someone thought he needs to make, variation. But that is according to Mahashiji, and that is the work that he did with all the scientists. That is not the case because the planet as a whole is behaving in the same way. There's a research that shows the spherical harmonics, that the whole planet is vibrating in a particular way, and that is producing the standing waves, which is exactly the same as longitudes and latitudes as we were explaining. Okay?
I would only add to this that local traditions, local influences, and local laws of nature can be reflected in local architectural style. But Vastu is mainly about the orientation and proportions and placement and alignment, and style can vary according to the tradition of the country.
Absolutely. We build houses in Russia. They look like Russian houses. In Finland, we build in Florida. We have built in India. We are building anywhere, Australia, New Zealand. And it is different construction material, different roof types, whatever is available, has nothing to do with the arrangement of rooms and the symmetry of the building.
Thank you. We do have another question by Professor Tej Kumar Karki. We have cited a lot of benefits, by having Vastu concepts. But the question is, has there been any comprehensive research on this basically from the disaster point of view, taking consideration of earthquake, flood, landslide, and currently, with the very recent pandemic?
It is mostly anecdotal that we have found people reporting these kind of positive results, and there's no explanation from modern science to it because the influence of harmony is invisible. For that reason, when we asked the scientists how can it be, then they referred us to the Meissner effect, where it says when you have a harmonious system, that tends to repel inharmonious, outer influences, and that is exactly what the Meissner effect is showing. So that's the explanation, but it is not a scientific research why it happens.
Thank you. Moving on, we do have two pretty similar questions by Navaraj Packrell and Sasiji. The question goes this way. Is the Vastu design philosophy applicable in the revitalization of old cities? The concept that we saw more relate to new city planning. So is there anything which is relevant for existing city and not built according to the principle of Vastus?
Well, basically, Vastu is for new planning, for new developments. And that's why we had shown the reconstruction of an existing city where we start with satellite towns outside new Vastu developments, and then the old congested city, you don't want to save it necessarily, maybe some historic buildings, but not the whole congested, the city levels. So there you can replace what is not good by something that is better, but it's easier to start in areas, where you don't have to demolish anything.
Wojtekji, can we very specifically mention that, okay, these are the corrective measures that can be taken for the existing settlements or existing cities?
Yes, as Dr. Hartman was suggesting, we can always identify or locate places where we want to build a settlement outside of the big city. Then people move out from the stressed and congested and polluted city centers to those settlements around, and then the center can be redone. But everything has to start with new concept of master plan, so that there is a logical plan or goal how we want to achieve the final city reconstruction.
Thank you, Wojtekji, but many thanks to Prafulaji for putting up this question. We have another question from Anju Mallaji. Basically, she's referring to the origin of Vastu. Basically, it originated in the southern hemisphere, and when we try to implement this in northern hemispheres, there can be a lot of contradictions. So, is there any solution possible without breaking these core values from northern hemisphere? From southern hemisphere to northern hemisphere?
What do you mean by southern hemisphere? You mean below the equator or what?
This is basically from the Indian continent, in the southern part of India.
South India.
From when you come from the southern part to northern part, you do have a lot of climatic variations and all that. So you might need to think in a different way, than for while planning in the southern hemisphere.
Well, as we said, the style can be different. If the climate is different, then of course you build the house that fits the climate, But the organization and the placement and orientation, all these aspects of Vastu, which are supposedly non-changing, they're the same. Doesn't matter if you are in the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand. And in the northern hemisphere, the tradition is more in terms of Vishwakarma, because that's the architect of the gods. And in the southern hemisphere, they say it is more in terms of Maya, which is the architect of the Asuras. So, but it doesn't matter. It all refers to the same source in the Veda. Only thing that the same source has kind of been forgotten. Vastu is basically pretty simple. We were trying to explain that. But over time, people thought, no, it has to be different. No, I have to do this and this. And then China comes. So at the moment, you have a hodgepodge, and Maharishi saw it, this hodgepodge. So if we want to use it, it has to be an academic system which does not change by the location. How can you teach a knowledge that is different in this town or that town or on this island or what, You have to have the same measurement system. You have to have the same principles so that you can teach architecture and engineering according to Vastu. Other things, of course, you adopt to the climate and whatever. When you build Vastu in Thailand, it looks like a Thai house. We built lots of schools in Thailand. They have beautiful roofs, pagodas, everything. But still, it is Vastu.
Thank you, IKG. We do have a couple of questions in chat box, but I also request participants to raise your hand from the options that you have, and then we get take that opportunity also. Please raise your hand using hand raise option if you would like to speak out.
Hare Ram sir has one. Arjun sir.
Please, Haram sir. Very brief. Thank you. Please unmute your mic, Haramji.
Sorry. Thank you, Arjunji. After seeing the pattern of old cities in the presentation here, I just had a click in my mind that when I saw this mandala city in Myanmar with the mandala pattern, with the Brahmastan in the center and grid pattern, I just thought that if we leave the present houses in Kathmandu Valley, the Malla Lichavi times cities, towns developed in Kathmandu, many towns, Kantipur, Lalitpur, and then there are many. Is there any resemblance found that this Vedic architecture with Brahmastan in the center and then this grid system was also followed here? Well, I'm not the city planner. I'm a civil engineer anyway, working in transportation and sustainability and environment. And I just had the feeling they might have also followed this pattern. Thank you.
So I would suggest that you look into Google Earth. That's what I did. Went through Google Earth with the help of Google Earth. I went through ancient or old towns in Nepal to find or to see if there are buildings or palaces or temples or street grids or street plans which are oriented according to cardinal directions. And in that way you can locate or you can answer your question. In Kathmandu, I didn't find anything else than these two. I looked into Patan Durbar and the other Durbar in Kathmandu also, and also in Bhaktapur, and they were not oriented according to cardinal direction. So they might have some principles, for example, Vastu all around, they have symmetry, but they missed the importance of orientation towards cardinal directions. And with the orientation, we didn't mention in our presentation, but the idea is that we are all traveling towards east as the earth is rotating towards east. So the buildings are also, the facade, the face of the building is facing the direction of rotation, of the travel. And traditionally, the idea was that as people in India and Nepal are greeting the sun and doing Surya Namaskara every morning, or were doing, the same Surya Namaskara every house was doing or is supposed to do to greet the morning sun and the devatas that are waking up early in the morning together with the sun and bringing vitality to the nature and to inhabitants. So the orientation towards east is very, very important. Actually, it's the most important principle in Vastu is to follow the orientation. And we have seen from our presentations that also other cultures who didn't know Vastu, at some stage, long time ago, they also understood the importance of Eastern orientation. We didn't mention, for example, that the famous pyramids in Egypt and the Sphinx in front of the pyramids is also facing east. They're oriented, the structures are oriented exactly towards east. That means in Egypt, they understood the importance of Eastern influences from rising sun, and they also understood the importance of aligning the building, the structures with cosmic order.
Thank you, Wojtekji. Yeah, it's getting very interesting, but I apologize for the limitations of time. So we'll be taking one more question from Sangeeta ji, who has already raised hand in the hand raising option. Sangeeta ji.
Thank you, Arjun ji. And thank you for the very good presentations. It's really very interesting, and this is also very close to my heart. So I just wanted to add one thing, that Vastu principles are more or less also closely related to the ecological benefits in city planning, as well as in residential planning or whatever. So I think to make it more acceptable to the scientific community, it would be good to have some sort of a scientific explanations or linkages between Vastu and the ecological benefits, so that this can be sort of incorporated in the academic curriculum as well. This becomes interesting to people, and it becomes more acceptable. So that is one of my concerns. Whereas I have certain queries, like for example, there are certain Vastu principles which goes against the feng shui principles. So how do you explain this? What Vastu says as right is sometimes negated by the feng shui principles. So are there any contradictions in this is what I wanted to know. And of course, also for the remedial measures, whenever there are some defects with relation to Vastu, there are remedial measures suggested, like for example, having pyramids or copper wires or whatever. So how do you explain this? So thank you. These are just all that I wanted to ask.
Thank you. There were three different questions, separate questions, so let's answer it very quickly. About ecological architecture or sustainable building or green building concept, it was not included in ancient Vastu principles because everything, thousands of years ago, everything was ecological according to natural law. This came up later and we have included it. We didn't have time today to spend time on it. I even had a slide on it, but I have removed it to save time. But we have it included in our design, all the principles of modern ecological house planning and healthy materials and so on. So this was one question. The other was about, what was the other one? Can you?
Feng Shui.
Oh, Feng Shui, yes. Feng Shui came up later. Vastu was the original plan. And as it came to India together with Buddhism, they have, well, they have changed it with time. So we stick to the original Vastu principles. And as I understand, Feng Shui doesn't have even scriptures, original old scriptures to which they could refer. There are only Vastu scriptures that are present.
Yeah,
so many principles are same, but not all.
Well, there is
Yep.
some difficulty with reference to Feng Shui, as you said, because originally the knowledge had come from India to China. Then what happened in China is they don't have any devatas. They worship the ancestors. So they had to turn things around, and that is basically the problem, that they opened the southern doors and all kinds of things. So you cannot go and you cannot mix these two, because it is changed, and we would say it is kind of corrupted and modified, and it does not go by the same laws. It does not go, by the same principles and like that. So better not use it, or better not, mix it. One is a complete system. The other one is even having so many different schools which are opposed to each other. So it is not a coherent or any type of authentic system, even though it sounds very interesting to some people. And it also is interesting because they can do all kinds of, as you were saying, talismans and the types of things to improve the auspiciousness and fix things. But we are concerned about construction according to natural law. Natural law is distinct and defined, and there is no fooling around you. You can't fool with nature, you see. And that is the difference. And that is the system Mahasi has revived. It's not revived on kind of superstition or type of stories.
Thank you.
I have one last question.
Yeah. Now on to Umesh Malla, sir.
Yes, in British town planning, we studied a lot about garden city movement. Are there any common elements in garden city movement with the Vastu principles, Vastu city planning?
Well, we think the best type of city to live in is a Vedic garden city. So the examples, the last one, I showed you a movie, you may have seen it, that showed basically a garden city, but it's a mixed use, and it is a kind of enclosed community which has everything. So you live there, you work there, you send your kids to school and like that. So it is your development, your home, and then only for whatever, big business, or if you need to go shopping or what. These days, as we can do anything on the internet, things come to you. We don't need to travel. Even now, our conference is across time zones and continents and what, So this is more the future, like this. You stay at home, have a beautiful home, and as they said, don't think you can live without a garden, because if there's a lockdown or any problem, you'll really suffer in a high-rise apartment building. So the ideal style of living is a Vedic garden city. And Wojtek was showing you something we did in Russia, and that is called Gorod-Sad, and Gorod-Sad also means a garden city.
Well, thank you very much, IKG. Now let's move on to closing notes, because we're running pretty late. And thank you very much, everyone. Now I invite Dr. Kingsley Brooks, International Director for Nepal Global Country of World Peace. You have 2-3 minutes only. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you so much, Arjun, and thank you everyone for organizing such a wonderful conference. It's really a marvel of modern technology that we can share ideas so easily from our own home. I was very struck by the opening comments of Kishore Tapaji, really putting the perspective of time forward. That we are in Kali Yuga, and there is Sat Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, It's this big expanse of time. And what Maharshi Ji did is he revived the knowledge of Stapatya Ved in the scientific language of our time here in Kali Yuga, and how to create the sunshine of Satyuga in Kali Yuga. And so it's very difficult to reference the knowledge that Maharshi is giving here in terms of what we see in our environment. We can see examples because when we talk about the knowledge of natural law, each and every one of us is an embodiment of natural law. So anyone who has very settled awareness, very expanded awareness, can spontaneously come up with these deep principles of Vastu Vidya. It's possible, and we see examples of that around us, even here in Kali Yuga. But the knowledge that Maharshi gave us is he gave us technology to create a better quality of life for all mankind. And he gave it to us in many different areas, as Dr. Deepak Baskotu was referring to, 12 different areas. In each one of these areas, Maharshi brought out knowledge to transform the quality of life for everyone. And this we have just seen a glimpse into the profound, universal laws of nature that govern how we establish our lives on earth. Stapatya Ved, establishment of our lives on earth. And when we build these buildings according to Vastu Vidya, this knowledge, we enter, when we move in these buildings, our whole life becomes more in tune with natural law. And by virtue of being in those buildings, we find our awareness, our intelligence, our happiness, our health is increased. So it's a great opportunity because we are in the land of the Veda. It is where it was cognized. The ancient rishis, the ancient seers, they gave rise, they wrote down their cognitions. And this is what we have, is the knowledge of natural law. But it's something that they cognized and wrote it down. But it's in this atmosphere of Vedic Nepal that we can be the very first country to really implement these systems of planning in accordance with natural law to transform the quality of life. And Maharshi, when he visited in 1974, he saw the potential of Nepal to transform very quickly because this knowledge of natural law, this knowledge of Stapatya Ved and all of the Vedic literature, this Vedic knowledge, resonates with the people, with the physiologies of the people of Nepal. And so we have a great opportunity to take this systematized knowledge that is universal and scientific, because Maharshi revived the ancient Vedic knowledge in the scientific language of our time. And so we have an opportunity to take this knowledge and apply it and create a much more ideal quality of life for all the people of Nepal, and for Nepal to become the example for the world and to fulfill Maharshi's vision for Nepal to lead the world. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you very much, Raja Kingsley. May I now invite Chairperson of NIAS, who is also the former Vice Chairperson of National Planning Commission, Dr. Jagdish Chandra Pokhrel, for his closing remarks. Dr. Pokhrel, please.
Arjunji, thank you so much. Well, it has been a pleasure and actually honored to have all these very distinguished speakers, Dr. Hartman, Scarsley, and of course, Raja Kingsley. And for the discussants, Dr. Pokhrel, planner Om Dharanandaji, and of course, the initiator, planner Kishore Thapa, and Dr. Baskota. Thank you so much, and all the participants who so eagerly waited for this and stayed throughout this session. At a time when we somehow feel that our basic mode of living that we should be dominating nature has been challenged. And again, we are rethinking the very concept of living with nature, living with nature. I think today's presentation is in some way directing us towards that type of living. To quote Victor Hugo, who said, "All the forces in the world are not so powerful as an idea whose time has come. Maybe the time has come." So maybe we should, in some way, see some silver lining in whatever difficulties we have due to coronavirus. But it does have made people to sit together, think, rethink, read some of the literature that we have put aside for a long time, particularly the professionals. As Omji just mentioned about Purana and our different yoga. So this has been wonderful to sort of tie what we are thinking and what might come next for us as a challenge, as an opportunity to sort of shape the physical environment that we are living in. And then revisit some of the things that we have forgotten. So in other words, probably we are heading for a kind of renaissance in our culture, and that is going to reflect in our architecture and of course our overall Vastu thinking. So we have invited academicians, practitioners, builders, students, and whoever is likely to sort of shape the thinking about this whole concept of Vastu in the future. And I think it is their contribution we'll see in the days to come. So it is more of a way to sort of initiating this discourse so that the academician, practitioners, and the students, the young generation in particular, start searching for the value in whatever we have not been able to teach in class, or even engage in discourse in community and also overall social environment. With these notes, I feel very honored to have these two speakers and of course the leader of Mercy Foundations. And we are hopeful that NIRS has initiated this sort of discourse, and in the future will be more specific, and then we might have more time to sort of continue this and take it to some logical end so that the practitioners can actually adopt it, if not by themselves, at least enter into this kind of training with Mercy Foundation also. I thank everybody, particularly Arjunji, for initiating this and coordinating this session, and Ranjanji, and all the NIRS board members who are present here, Unam Raj Bhandari and Nirmalaji and others. I'm sure this is going to initiate new kind of discourse, and we will be engaging ourselves in this forum and other forums within academia and outside in the days to come. Thank you very much, and a good night for Nepali, and a good day for those who come from Europe, and similarly, whatever the time it is there in other parts of the world. Thank you so much. Namaste. And regards to all of you. And we'll see you again, and keep safe under this corona crisis.
Namaste.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jagdish sir. Following Jagdish sir's kind of information, we are available. The NIRS and Nepal Mercy Vedic Foundations are available to offer you with the online courses, which interested participants can join, but there are some prerequisites. You already have details of the organizers. Please drop your email of your interest, if you would like to join the online courses, we'll provide you with necessary information. Thank you so much. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Thank you so much, Arjun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jai Gurudev. Namaste.
हजुर सर हामी छौँ सर
अहिले कतिजना हो है 21 जना अझै 21 आउला है उन्मुक्त गरौँ नि सर
अनम्युट अल गरिदिउँ न त यो लास्ट
ठिकै छ Okay. 16. What was it? 67? Another?
Sorry, sir?
67, no? Total participant? Maximum? 67 lie.
5 जति त देखे हो मैले
67 so this one. इमेल पढाइदियो भनेर सबैले पढाइदिनु ठिकै छ ल रमन भाइलाई त भोलि भेटौँ त होइन
ओके सर
है ल है
ओके सर
भेटौँ है भोलि
हस् सर गुड नाइट